Alright guys, welcome back to the Celestial Invitational. We have two matches out of the way of the round of 8, that being Tom and Clento moving on with their 3-0 victories, pretty dominant by them. And after a long break, we had trouble finding some of our players here. We finally have Firebat versus Jiesha coming up next for you guys. Firebat obviously being a world-renowned player, winning the World Championships in 2014. As you can see on the screen, they're part of Archon as well. And going against Jiesha, who was our definitely not very well known Chinese player, but has worked his way to get here. We'll take a look at Firebat's lineup, that being the Mill Rogue, which we haven't seen since the first day, obviously, as well as the Reno Warlock, and finally his more rampy style Druid deck. Looking forward to this since we haven't seen these decks since the very first day, and it was definitely a surprise seeing it on that first day, Kaldi.
Yeah, I wonder if you would want to run the new Naga, the 5/5 that makes your
Yeah.
cards cost 5. I guess we saw Acera, we saw crazy stuff like, for example, Cal's of Shards, not something we see every day here in Druid, but looking at Jiesha's decks here, we have the, looks to be the standard Oil Rogue here. There is the Freeze Maze, and there is the Priest here. So this is exactly like the strategy that Tice was going for, though. And it's a bit interesting that he's not running Reno, but he's only running one Fireball.
Right, yeah, he doesn't have the Reno in the Mage deck, and the Priest deck, it might get him into a bit of trouble here because it is a very anti-aggro focused Priest deck. We saw it tops out at that Justicar Trueheart, so no big things like the Mind Control or stuff like that to be able to push him through the game, something like a Ysera like that. But yeah, going to be difficult to be able to be aggressive with that Priest against the lineup of Firebat, which is definitely anti-aggro focus as well, going with that Ramp Druid and the Mill Rogue as well as the Reno Warlock. So this is a very interesting matchup. We typically don't see these decks whatsoever. And I guess before we get into those games, I want to talk about the players first. Obviously, Firebat, super well known, like I mentioned earlier. Jiesha, he made his way here, qualifying, through the Chinese qualifier tournaments, and he's able to get out of his group, which had Surrender, one of the best players in Korea right now. And I would say that people even in China probably know Firebat more so than Jiesha. So this is definitely a David versus Goliath situation. But Jiesha has proven himself thus far, and he could pull off the upset potentially. What do you think his chances are, Kaldi?
I think the main thing is, can Firebat win with this Rogue? Now, generally, what Jiesha would be going for would be to counter the aggro decks. We have Freeze Mage very strong against aggro, we have Priest very strong against aggro, and Rogue very strong against aggro. And this would demolish, for example, a Paladin, probably 3-0, and be very good against something like the Hunter. But against what Firebat is bringing, I mean, Reno Luck is greedy, he has a very greedy Druid, and then he has the Mill Rogue. I feel like the Mill Rogue may do really well against both the Freeze Mage and the Priest here.
Right, exactly. All three of these decks, Firebat is kind of throwing a wrench into the plans of Jiesha. The Reno Warlock is something that we've seen a lot, but crucially, the Ramp Druid and Mill Rogue, not something we see every single day. Firebat did have the same lineup. Remember, these guys aren't allowed to change their decks per se, so obviously we're not going to get the new wing of League of Explorers being put into their decks for these matches, but they have to keep the same decks, but they can change up their lineups. However, Firebat going with the exact same lineup as far as his first match was concerned with the Rogue, Warlock, and Druid, and that propelled him to a very, very good first day. He was able to 3-0 on his first day, so he has won with every single one of his decks. One thing we talked to him about when in our interview when Monk and I were casting was talking to him about the Mill Rogue, and he said that even though he was going against the Druid, if the Druid doesn't know how to win that matchup, then it's definitely in favor of Firebat, because the way you win is you get a minion on the field and you go for that double combo, but his opponent that day didn't realize that that was the strategy to go for, so it'll be very interesting to see if Jiesha kind of practiced going against Mill Rogue, knowing that that could be a matchup that he goes against, going against Firebat.
I mean, generally, if you're the lesser-known player, you have to make up for that. Yes, you don't have as much experience in the booth, as much experience playing in front of a lot of people for a lot of money, so then you have to, I think, kind of compensate by doing more preparation. I mean, I feel like Jiesha has to know what type of decks Firebat is bringing here. But we saw Shadowy, for example. Shadowy also brought Mill Rogue here in Group C, and he did end up winning with both his Druid and Paladin in first go against Colento, but then just fell 0-3 with his Mill Rogue. But the lineup that Colento was bringing was aggressive versus this lineup here is the Firebat facing is very defensive. So I feel like Milrock will do better against a defensive deck, but I mean it's risky still for Firebat to bring a deck like Milrock here in around the face, so he potentially might be out. But I feel like the Druid, for example, the Druid that Firebat is bringing will do really well against all three decks even. I mean, it will demolish the Mage, he'll do decently against the Priest, and I think the Rogue might be some trouble, but I feel like Jiesha's gonna win with the Rogue no matter what. So what I'm expecting is the Rogue for Jiesha to be out of the way pretty early. I feel like the Druid with Firebat is gonna be out of the way pretty early, and that'll just be down to the Rogue Warlock against Mage Priest here.
Right, right. As far as that Druid is concerned, how do you think the strategy goes against something like a Freeze Mage? Obviously, being a faster Druid could help in putting the pressure on and getting that win, but will Firebat be able to go for an aggressive strategy, or do you think he'll go for a more defensive strategy against that Freeze Mage?
I think he'll try to go as aggressive as he can compared to the scenario, but Firebat probably getting the worst matchup up early here. But I mean, uh, he is running at least Acid Drake. But Firebat had Milrock, didn't he?
He
Yeah.
did have Milrogue, so yeah, that's just something that's part of his deck to allow him to draw. We did see Shadowy ran to a bit of trouble not being able to draw enough cards in that instance when he was playing earlier. Obviously, we saw him, kind of have to sap and vanish the entire time, and finally he just ran out of cards to delay his opponent. Looks like that's a bit of tech into Firebat's deck so that he makes sure he can draw into his options.
I want to mention though, he did end up going first. Shadowy did with the Milrock, and he kept Sap and he kept Blade Flurry. So I think that was very noteworthy when using the Milrock, because if you keep two removal cards, you may run into trouble if you don't draw your Cold Hard Oracle, and that's exactly what happened. He got punished heavily for that.
Right, and one thing to keep in mind here is that these players know every single card. Obviously, as we're casting, we see the full lineup of their decks on the screen before we start the matches. So players have been able to go back and look at those VODs and see every single last card. So Jiesha knows exactly what he's playing against Firebat, can start counting the cards and see what he's up against. Firebat, on the other hand, does have the same luxury, but obviously, like you say, this is not going to be that favorite of matchup for him, since Jiesha can kind of just throw out all the cards in his hand. The only cards that are pretty difficult to get rid of are that Sprint and the Azure Drake, which typically you don't want to be drawing too many cards against a Mill Rogue.
I mean, this isn't the best hand though for Jiesha to face a Milrock, as the Acid Drake will draw your card. I mean, the Loatheb is going to be great versus any rogue, but it's just kind of slow and
Right.
clunky. I mean, he does have the prep, that's the one redeeming quality, but think about if he actually preps our sprint here, it might even be game over.
Yeah, I highly doubt he's going to want to prep out Sprint here. I imagine it's just going to be that Paladin Treader. He might be thinking about backstabbing that Deathlord preemptively, not only to get the card out of his hand, but to maybe just get some extra damage onto there so that he can finish it up later. Maybe with that fan. You could go with something like the Azure Drake plus Prep Fan later on, just gets as much mana efficiency as possible, while you're cycling, you're going through your deck, but not too quickly. In particular, that Sprint in his hand, I feel like he's never going to use for the rest of the game. And he is going to go for that backstab, just get cards out of his hand, make it as difficult as possible for Firebat to mill him in this situation. And Firebat seems to be wondering about what he's going to do here. Looks like he's just going to go for the Azure Drake. And
He has the three mana, three damage backstab here on top
yeah,
of that. I mean,
very
I feel
powerful.
like Jiesha is playing like this is a mill rogue, but still, you would also go for the sweater over prep sprint if you're facing an oil rogue here.
Yeah, definitely. So Jiesha with a decision to make here. I imagine he might go for the Azure Drake. Obviously, it's a bit scary drawing cards, but could be too early to go for that Loatheb right now. I mean, Loatheb is basically a nice tempo play no matter when you play it. But coming up on turn 5 for Firebat, does maybe Jiesha knows he runs 2 Azure Drakes or something of that kind, or maybe a Loatheb of his own. So Jiesha looks like he's just gonna go with the Drake. I imagine he's gonna go for the Prep Fan. I mean, you are cycling the fan, but you're getting rid of the prep, so you're not really filling up your hand too much here.
Yeah, also killing the Death Lord, and that's going to be very important
Yeah.
here.
Gets the Big Game Hunter out of his deck, which is it's not the worst thing ever. You're not, it'd be a little bit worse, I believe, to draw something like a Loatheb, for instance, if it weren't in his hand, or something like a heal bot that could, prevent him from getting that battle cry, even an SI agent that he would want later to use for that combo. So Big Game Hunter in the end, not too bad, not the worst, but not the best either.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Firebat is still waiting for the Cold Light Oracle. His hand is a bit awkward, but the backstab is excellent here. Really complements this well. I feel like, yeah, he's going to hear, but he's gonna, okay, he's gonna use
Wow,
the Shadow Step.
he's going to use the Shadow Step just to draw another card, and that's going to limit the power with which he can, or limit the effectiveness of his Cold Light Oracle in the future. Obviously, not going to be able to Shadow Step that in that point, but does have the Bran in hand. So if he ever gets those Cold Lights and gets Jiesha with a full hand, he can do a lot of damage milling him.
Now, one thing to mention though is that he drew last. That's generally not something you see from Firebat, so I'm wondering, he looks really, really tired. Could this possibly be something that's coming into play here?
Right. You typically expect Firebat to have impeccable play, so drawing last there could be a bit of an issue. We see this play obviously didn't need the extra spell damage to kill that Big Game Hunter, but or the Azure Drake for that matter. So yeah, very interesting that he did decide to draw last. Obviously, it's not a very easy decision to make, having to Shadow Step your Azure Drake. Typically, you want to save that for your Cold Light Oracle. So, looks like Firebat reconsidered in the middle of his turn and decided that he needed to draw more cards. In this situation, imagine he's just going to go for the Fan Knives and the Death Lord, just cycle through his deck a bit more, try to get to those Cold Light Oracles.
I do agree, but yeah, this was very weird for him. I mean, there was the option even to go Bran on top of that, but we never know, I guess, here. So we see the fan come down. Let's get the Death Lord rolling. Now, he
Somehow,
won't.
yeah, sorry, somehow Firebat's putting pressure on Jaysha's life total. This is completely insane. Sorry for cutting you off. What were you about to say?
Mhm. I guess the Death Lord kind of messes up his play, because I feel like Jiesha was planning to go for the Azure Drake Flurry. But still, I mean, as soon as Firebat gets that Cold Light Oracle, he's looking really, really good. He has the Vanish on top of it, so yeah, this is going okay for Firebat, considering that he hasn't drawn the Cold Light yet.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, Jaysha's taking a bit of damage here, but that's not the strength of this mill rogue. You're not trying to do damage. You're basically just trying to, mill your opponent. That's kind of the name of the deck, obviously. So, I mean, even though Jaysha's a bit on the back foot here, if he can just, stabilize the board a bit, he can get back into this game, and Firebat's going to need to draw those Cold Light Oracles ASAP.
Yeah, an interesting idea though. He takes 2 damage to have the Death Lord at, what is that, 1 health instead of 4? I mean, it's probably the right move, but there was also the idea of just trading in the Azure Drake. I guess he's expecting the Azure Drake just to get killed by an Eviscerate, but if he's at that low of a life total, does he maybe just want to wait a little bit?
Right. Yeah, I mean, he like you said, that Azure Drake could die here, and could even favor the 4 damage to the face, even if the Azure Drake lives. So maybe he wants to just use his own hero power to take that out. Jaysha realizing that this Mill Rogue is most likely not going to burn him out of the game. Most likely going to be a situation where the Mill Rogue obviously wanting to make Jaysha draw more cards instead. So I can see him being a bit aggressive, not fearing for his life total as much as you typically would facing a rogue. And just taking the extra damage here. Looks like he's going to do the same thing. Going to take out that Death Lord. See what we draw here. Going to be an SI7. Not the best. Really want to get that combo out. But he can play either the Loatheb or the Healbot here. I imagine the Loatheb might be a bit better. But he might be fearing his life total. So yeah, it goes for the Healbot. What do you think about this play here, Cody? Going for the Healbot rather than the Loatheb?
I don't like it, personally. I mean, how is he going to die if there's a Loatheb on the board and he has 12 life? I don't see that happening, so I don't know. I feel like this is just playing a bit scared. I felt like he could go for the Loatheb and then into Healbot.
Right.
It's more pressure, it's limiting him, limiting Firebat more. I feel like Firebat, yeah, has more options because of it. But Firebat is now looking to push, it seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like he's just setting up that Deadly Poison for future turns in case he draws something like a Cold Light Oracle and his mana is all used up. But yeah, I mean, maybe Jiesha just wants to have a huge turn. Say if he picks up a prep anytime soon, he could play that Lotheb and then go for something like, prep Tinkers, make that guy really, really big. And you basically can't sap that as Firebat. Even if you, I mean, even using 7 mana to sap it seems like okay if it's like a big guy on the field, but you really don't want to be sapping Lothar because it'll just screw you up for another turn.
Yeah, it sure will. But I mean, we have to at least consider though that Firebat can't sap this. And now, as soon as the Vanish comes down, I mean, the sap is probably the worst card Firebat could possibly draw. What can he do here? I mean, sapping the Thalnos may even be appealing at this point, as
Right.
crazy as that seems.
Yeah, he could go for the sap on the Thanos, realizing that Jiesha doesn't have any options either. The crazy thing about this game is that Jiesha could have actually gone for a sprint at some point, and he wouldn't have gotten punished for it. But yeah, in this instance, obviously you're a bit afraid of going for that sprint because of the power of that Milrogue and making you overdraw. But like you said, Firebat's gonna go for the sap on the Thanos, realizing that he wants to just slow down Jiesha as much as possible, but obviously can't do much more than that in this situation. Prep is a pretty interesting card here. Jiesha can use that to guarantee that the Tinker's Oil goes on Lotheb. And he has 12 cards left, as you can see. Is he crazy enough to go for sprint here?
I think he should go for the sprint, but this is what I call the Firebat effect. You're playing against an actual champion, and you feel like he has every single card. You feel like he has 2 Cold Oracles and 2 Shadow Steps, and that's just the scenario that you're going to be playing around. I've seen this over and over when I was casting him with Affinity. The qualified players that were coming from the qualifier just, yeah, they played so scared when they were facing Firebat, and we've already seen Jiesha hold back and going for the heal ball before the Lotheb, and I feel like if he skips out on the sprint, that's just another example of that.
Yeah, definitely. We do see that going for the sprint would be correct here, and he's really agonizing over it. And yeah, I mean, that said, right when you go for the sprint, Firebat might just top deck that Cold Light Oracle, right? So it's very difficult. Looks like he's not going to go for the sprint, just going to go for the extra damage on the Slotheb and put as much pressure on as possible. Firebat's going to need to have an answer that isn't putting the card back into Jiesha's deck. Jiesha here not going to go for the attack with the weapon either. But Firebat into a lot of trouble. And this is why this matchup isn't so good for the Milrogue, as he does pick up the Cold Light Oracle.
Better late than never, I guess. But Jason not attacking. He could have put him down to 3 health. Wouldn't that even have been better in case there's a vanish or a sap?
Right, yeah, definitely. Especially because Firebat's going to need to draw some healing here if he were to stay out of range of that. Jiesha does pick up the Tinker Sharpshot Oil. That would put him at 7 attack on his dagger. So Firebat needs to heal right now. He also needs to get rid of the board. How is he going to be able to do it?
Oof, think about if he gone for the Brando on top of that. We've been milling like crazy. But the thing is, Firebat's hand is also getting really stacked at this point. He has the heal from the...
The thing is,
what's that called? The refreshment winter. Yeah, like that's some healing, but it would be enough.
Well, it looks like, yeah, he's going to go for the prep sap, it seems like. Obviously, you never want to prep, or you never want to sap, excuse me, the Lotheb, but in this situation, it's just too much damage that you're taking from that Lotheb, so you're just going to have to figure it out later when that Lotheb comes down at that instance, but looks like Jiesha, he has a decent amount of damage. If he picks up the Blade Flurry, that would be lethal, but he does not. With the Deadly Poison and Tinker Sharpshot Oil, it will bring his dagger up to, what would that be, 9?
He has 11 in total, yeah, because he has the SI on top of
So that we know that would have been lethal if he attacked last turn then.
It would have been, yeah. There was no good reason not to, that I saw at least. But goes for the Lotheb. I feel like there's even some merit to going for the Lotheb after the I guess the Tinkers. I mean, there's some merit to a bit. Yeah, exactly.
I think there might not be a BGH in a second. Obviously, Jiesha knows the entire deck of Firebat, so if he's already looked at the deck and realizes there's no BGH, then obviously this would be the correct play. But
it could be a point, yeah.
Yeah, in any case, Firebat does pick up a second heal bot, so that could help him quite a bit here. What is Jiesha's dagger at? Is it a 9 attack?
It is at a 9, absolutely, yeah. But he'll heal for 16, go up to 21. But still, he's taking 17. This won't be lethal though, and I mean, if
Right.
there's no AoE, I mean, there's the possibility for Firebat to just vanish this and start replaying his minions and keep on healing.
Wow, so Firebat just going to tank the damage, realizing he needs to do it now or else he's gonna just take more damage to the face. Obviously worried about that Blade Flurry as well. There is an Eviscerate, so that's actually lethal, isn't it?
I
Yep.
believe it is, yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be
Mhm.
lethal. Jiesha is finally going to be able to pick up this game. Obviously, Firebat struggling that entire time. And Jiesha going to go up 1-0. Pretty interesting game there. Now, we aren't obviously going to overreact to this one game. The lineups that both of these players have brought are pretty out there. So, we definitely don't know what's going to happen until we get deeper into the series. But at least for that match, Jayshaw is able to take the victory. So, I mean, maybe he can raise his confidence and bring that confidence into the next couple matches to maybe take out the upset.
If you were talking about the idea of Firebat really leads with Rogue, that will be his weakest deck, and now he's already faced up against. We were talking about probably being Jace's strongest deck in the Rogue. So, but Jace got the better of the first game here, mostly in terms of the picking. But I mean, Firebat from his point of view, this wasn't a one-sided game. It really wasn't, and this is the worst matchup for the Mill Rogue. So I'm afraid for Jiesha if he's going to be playing uh, two weaker decks against this Milrock. I think like Firebat can absolutely win here.
Right, yeah, this is a pretty good matchup for that Milrug. Obviously, the Freeze Mage thrives in having a huge hand and just having so many options in there, but in this instance, it's kind of scary to keep your draw cards because then the Milrogue just makes you overdraw. Yeah, so it looks like Jaysha is going to keep that Doomsayer, going to try to slow down his opponent as much as possible. Mad Scientist is okay. It does draw a card out of your deck, which helps, get to that fatigue quicker. But on the other hand, you're not going to be milling the hand of Jaysha because you do have the card out of hand.
I want to talk about one matchup. That's the Freeze Mage against the Old Patron, and in that matchup alone, you actually wanted to draw the secret before you played the Mad Scientist,
Right.
because every turn that he would fatigue earlier was just horrible for the Freeze Mage. And you were doing stuff like not playing Acolyte because you didn't want to draw cards. That's obviously out of the
Yeah.
way now with the huge nerf to Patron, but
So
I
is it
mean,
the
there is.
same situation in this matchup? Do you want to be drawing the secrets first as Jaysha?
I don't think so. I think this is completely fine. I think this probably will be more determined by Firebat's draw. But I feel like overall, Jiesha is in a lot of trouble. It depends on what he draws. If he's drawing the Emperor and the Antonidas and the Alexstrasza early, he can get into a point where he just has lethal
Hmm.
and he can just ignore the mill. I mean, if he has 10 cards or 5 cards or 1 card left when he has lethal, it doesn't matter in the end. Kind of like the Foul Reaver deck works. But there is the point though. I mean, Firebat has 2 heal bots, Brand Bronzebeard. He has Shadow Step. He has the Refreshment Vendor. So if he gets Alexstrasza, he can just heal non-stop.
Yeah, and that just shows the complexity of this Milrogue deck. Do you save those Shadow Steps and the Brand Bronzebeard for the draw and to make your opponent mill, or do you save it for the extra healing? And that could be a delicate balance for Firebat. It looks like it's going to be... Oh, it's going to be an actual kill on this Doomsayer. Firebat not wanting his Deathlord to go down so easily. And speaking of this Deathlord, when it goes down, what it draws is going to be absolutely huge. Obviously, something like that Alex draws and not getting its Battlecry off would be pretty big. Something like an Antonidas without using its ability and just dying off right away would be pretty big as well. Obviously, we see it in Firebat's hand. Doesn't have a way to kill anything like that right away, but could be pretty huge depending on what comes out of this Deathlord.
I mean, Jiesha is just playing scared here again. I mean, I don't blame him not coming with the Arcane Intellect, but he may have to at some point. Because if he's just stalling and playing a secret every turn, then this gives Firebat more time to draw what he needs and put on more pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Firebat doesn't need to draw the Coalite Oracle if there's no pressure put on him in the first place, and it's difficult for Jayshaw to put on that pressure unless he draws cards for himself. So, like just like you say, it's going to be difficult for Jayshaw to do this if he's going to play scared the entire game. And there's some more card draw that he might not even play here.
Absolutely true. I mean, what can Jiesha do now? Now he has no choice. I feel like if he doesn't go with the Arcane Intellect, he may just be. Yeah, what can he do then? Like, ping and turn and give Firebat, so much damage to the face, more time, and just,
Yeah, the
I don't
funny
know.
thing about this is that Jiesha playing scared here will just give Firebat the ability to burn him down. So, funnily enough, will we see the first Milrogue versus Freeze Mage game that ends with the Milrogue just beating him down? That would be absolutely hilarious.
I feel like if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen now. I mean, 'cause this Milrock is stronger than it's ever been. We have the gang up, we have the Brand Bronzebeard combo. Yeah, it's looking good.
So, Firebat reaching for that vanish, realizing that there's never going to be a huge board for J-Shot no matter what. So yeah, just going to get rid of this Doomsayer this way and allows him to draw more cards with that Azure Drake. Also realizing that no matter how much draw he has, it's not going to be as much as the draw in J-Shot's deck with that the Arcane Intellect and the Acolyte of Pain and potentially Coldite Oracles. Not Coldite Oracles, excuse me, with the Loot Hoarder, stuff like that. So, going to be very interesting to see Firebat go with his strategy of, bringing back his Azure Drake and getting that utility in the future, also getting the utility of that Deathlord as well.
Yeah, I feel like Firebat really wants to save this weapon for a flurry later on, because there's stuff like Emperor, there's stuff like the Antonidas that he just really wants to avoid, and this
Oh,
Doomsayer, he just keeps on killing it, or bouncing it
wow.
here, second bounce in a row here.
Are
I
you
mean, what else
surprised
is
that he
he
sapped here? Was he that worried about, getting his Azure Drake, thrown back? Or
I mean, it's
killed, excuse
it's
me?
his main minion. I mean, like Firebat, okay, sure, he can stay alive for long with all this heal, but you also have to kill Jiesha eventually, and is he gonna do that by doing 2 damage per turn with the Deathlord? I don't think so. I think
Right.
Ashdrake is actually relatively important.
Yeah, and he could use that for just for the minion to minion combat, which is pretty relevant in this situation. Obviously, J-Shot, if he just plays out that Doomsayer here, it just dies to the board. So, pretty interesting situation. Firebat, do you think he starts to go for the mill here since J-Shot's finally played out that Acolyte Pain onto the board?
I don't mind something like a fan of match here, but it's a bit tough.
Yeah,
Still, he
especially.
only has 4 cards, so it's maybe a bit early to be going for something like that. I mean, I don't like eviscerating this, but how is he going to be dealing with this Doomsayer? I don't know. Maybe backstab fan? What backstab fan attacking with Ashdrake into the Doomsayer
What
and
if
going for
you
the Deathlord? I don't know. I
right?
think I
What?
can like that.
Hmm. Yeah, looks like Firebat's just gonna go for, drawing J-Shot some cards here. He's going to be able to take out that Doomsayer either with his face or something like an Eviscerate. But, yeah, wanting to keep that dagger in place. Very interesting play here by Firebat. Obviously, it's a really tough dance that you want to be, kind of fooling around with in this situation because, if you draw J-Shot too many cards, he's going to have those options later on. Could have been an option for him to just let, J-Shot starve, only have those 4 cards in hand, and wait for the future when you want to mill him. But looks like he just wants to make J-Shot draw as many of his cards as possible, and if you let that Acolyte of Pain die, with it having drawing 1 or 0 cards, depending on if you let that Doomsayer stay up, then in the end maybe you don't have the requisite mill to kill
Yeah,
him in the end.
important thing about last turn was he going for the Deathlord instead of the Cold Light, and he figured, okay, if I'm going for the Cold Light, I preferably want to be starting my turn with the Cold Light, so I could using like a second Shadow Step or a Bran. I want to gang up as well the Cold Light, but I mean, Jace is just going upstairs, and it is a bit
Hmm.
premature even.
I think part of it is that he just doesn't want to get milled here, and he realizes that since Firebat has such a large hand, that could be a situation right here. I mean, Bran is such a strong card in allowing crazy amounts of mill to happen. So I think Jaysha, again, playing a little bit afraid of what the possibilities are for Firebat. Just gonna Fireball face. And on the other hand, I mean, if Firebat draws Jaysha enough cards here, maybe he could find that lethal with that Roaring Torch already in hand.
He definitely wants to be healing right now, and I think he may even be wanting to save the gang up for something like a heal bot. That wouldn't surprise me at least. He's up at 20 right now, and I mean, is Jason gonna go for the Alex Strauss and then be left just completely vulnerable? Is he gonna be continuing bursting Firebat down? I mean, he only has 6 damage from hand.
Yeah, definitely. He does have that Ice Lance for potential damage if he picks up a Frostbolt. Looks like Firebat has no choice but to gang up this Cold Light Oracle. Doesn't want that guy to die to something like a Flame Strike. And at least just going to get that into his hand. So maybe he can pick up both the second gang up and a heal bot to be able to heal himself in the future. Again, not able to gang up the heal bar right now, so that's not an option.
Yeah, I mean, even a cold light could, make him be able to first of all mill Jiesha and second of all draw his heal bot and the second gang up. There's also the second shadow step that's going to be very important. But yeah, I mean, there's also the vanish potential. So there's so many good cards left for Firebat, and I feel like Jiesha, this hand is just dead. I mean, two Arcane Intellect, the Acolyte of Pain. He has secrets that he can't play. I mean, he may be looking at something like Frost Nova, Roaring Torch. I mean, this just
Right.
seems horrible.
Yeah, it's really tough here for Jiesha because I imagine he wants to go for that Alexstrasza, but obviously he has a completely full hand, and it wouldn't be too difficult for Firebat to make him mill plenty of cards. And obviously Jiesha doesn't want to be milling so much of his, doesn't want to be milling damage in general. And so look, he looks like he's gonna play the Acolyte of Pain. That's actually insane. That could be very disastrous if Firebat wants to make him mill more cards. But, I mean, Jiesha does go for the Roaring Torch to the face, has those double Ice Lances, so he could go for a ton of damage if he gets the right cards. Let's see what Firebat decides to do here. Doesn't have any draw other than using the Fan of Knives. Actually, just going to kill this straight off. Are you surprised by that?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I
I,
guess he'd have some trouble killing the 1-1 afterwards, but could he possibly not want him to be going for
ooh,
this? The heal
plays
bot
the
comes down, yeah.
yeah, plays the heal bot, which means that if Jiesha is able to get rid of this heal bot, then Firebat won't have the double heal with that brand unless he picks that up later on. And Firebat was thinking about using Eviscerate. I imagine he wasn't worried about the damage, was probably more worried about not having a full hand after he potentially vanishes his board next turn, if he's able to pick that up. So that could be consideration, but without the vanish already in hand, can't commit to it. Jiesha is going to go for the Alexstrasza now that he's seen the heal bot and just end turn. Again, every time he does this, it's dangerous because he could start milling cards. And on top of that,
Oof,
Firebat,
oof,
yeah, gets the
oof.
Colette Oracle. Very huge card. And looks like he's going to go for as much draw as possible. And he's not going to have the mana to be able to heal himself up after this, though. With
He
the...
could potentially with the Shadow Step, I guess.
Yeah.
Guess the Ganger discards the Thalnos, the
Oh,
Mad
those were really
Scientist.
good cards for Jiesha to mill right here.
Mhm. He does have the second torch though, so currently, I mean, Jace is looking at how much damage even 14, 15.
Yeah, it looks like
He
he
has
has the
lethal.
game here. So Firebat needs healing, and that's not. He's not gonna have enough to heal here. Finally picks up the heal bot. Doesn't even get a shadow step though. Even mills his
Oof, he
own
knows
shadow
his
step.
step.
So
Oof.
that looks like it's going to be game. I think Jaisha has enough damage. If I'm not miscounting this, he
Had he wait,
has.
had he backstabbed his own minion, he could have actually gone for he could actually kept and bounced the refreshing wonder, couldn't he? Yeah. Had he backstabbed his own cold light, he could have bounced the refreshing wonder now. Hadn't he lost out on the shadow step?
Yeah, he absolutely could have. That could have been an option if he did that, and it would have been 8 healing for him. But as it stands, I doubt J-Shot's going to miss this. He doesn't have any cards left, so yeah, he's not going to miss it. And he's going to be taking this game and going to take a 2-0 or 2-0 lead, excuse me, over Firebat here, and Firebat in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame Firebat though. That was a crazy complicated turn, and expecting to have the one card you mill be the one card you need in that
Right.
game is just not something that's happening. But I mean, there was the Bran on the board on top of that, so he would have actually had 8 healing from the refreshment vendor.
Yeah, and was there a chance for J-Shot to win the game if Firebat healed out of range that turn? Because, J-Shot was milling a lot of cards there, and do you remember what he had left? He had an Antonidas and a few like kind of random cards there.
Yeah,
Could
he
you
was looking at secrets. He had 2 Arcane Intellect, so I feel like actually Firebat would have won with that Separate Step.
Wow. Yeah, probably would have won because, J-Shot probably would have had to kill the heal bot or else it would have, gotten Firebat even more health in the long run with that Shadow Step, or not the Shadow Step, with the Vanish. So yeah, critical, it is kind of a misplay. It's hard to call it a misplay when the turn was that complicated, but I mean, it is what it is. It is a misplay in the end for Firebat there, and unfortunately it cost him.
I mean, you have to figure, okay, that the backstab isn't going to be that much, isn't going to be worth that much. And I feel like he was mulliganing for what he was trying to draw into a shadow step or a heal. I felt like that was the idea. I mean, he was going as aggressively as possible with the draw, and he just was drawing 4 cards when he had 7 in hand already. That's just such a minor misplay, but it ended up costing him big time here and may potentially be the whole series. Because I mean, the Freeze Mage was supposed to be the easy deck to beat, as he has the Druid, for example, and the Reno Lock with all of its heals. So now he has to beat the Priest 3 times over, for example.
Yeah, the good news for him is that he is playing 3 slower decks, and this priest is absolutely anti-aggro. It tops out at 6 mana and that Justicar True Heart, so going to be very difficult for Jiesha to just kill his opponent here. It's basically a deck that tries to stay alive as long as possible.
Yeah, no question here. But if we look at the Chinese side of it, though, we're gonna maybe have a Chinese here in the semi-final, and something people have to be happy about to see some variety. As you know, we saw Braro's fall ever so short here, sadly, against Tom, and so it's gonna be Kolento, Tom, potentially Jiesha here.
Yeah, the last match obviously being Eloise versus Life Coach. So, yeah, let's see if Jayshaw can in fact pull off this upset. He is in a great spot as far as the score obviously is concerned. Going to be difficult to finish off this last game. I feel like this is pretty similar to the last match where Tom was up 2-0 but got his 2 wins with two very solid decks, but was left with a Shaman in the end, and was able to take that game in the end because, of his very excellent play with the Shaman versus the Zoo. But in this case, Jiesha has a completely different set of decks to deal with here, and also a completely different deck that he's piloting at the moment in that Control Priest. So yeah, going to be interesting to see how he deals with this situation. Has a few options in his hand. Could go for a lot of cards, obviously, but that's not really something you want to do against a Mill Rogue.
Question about that. I mean, what is he gonna do now, though? He's still a bit scared of potentially milling here. I don't blame him. You're looking at something here like the Injured Blade Master. That seems pretty cool. He'll do 1 damage to his minions, but it's a lot of stuff for Firebat to deal with that early. The Sap is a big card here, though, and potentially even Prep Vanish, although I think that may be a bit premature.
Yeah, the Prep Vanish would get rid of the board, but obviously this isn't the most expensive board for Jaysha, only costing him a total of 6 mana. So yeah, looks like Firebat not wanting to commit to the Vanish just yet. Obviously that's an extremely potent card in any matchup for the Mill Rogue to use, and obviously the Prep Vanish is extremely good as well. So Firebat just going to sit here, going to take it slow, allows opponent potentially play the Injured Blade Master right back onto the field, and he knows that eventually he can maybe get the healing off of the Zombie Chow, so going to just go take it slow here.
It's going to be very funny here to see these Thought Steal. It's not a card that's played in the Western meta, neither actually is just a card. It was played briefly, but this is Control Priest here, not Dragon Priest. I'm interested to see this. I really don't like this Injured Blade Master. I mean, with the flurry, and this is just almost game over. But I want to apologize about last game. So it's been a long, long time since Shadow Step is in the meta. I think Nax Ramas was probably the last time that was actually played, and in that case it was with the Leroy, the Leroy Gadgetzan combo. But Shadow Step, of course, reduces the cost of the minion by 2, not 3.
Oh,
so
right. So that wasn't an
it
option
was,
for him.
yeah, it's Prep that reduces it by 3. I have to excuse my lack of Shadow Step practice here recently, but so Firebat actually couldn't have bounced the refreshment vendor.
Right, so really nothing to do there for Firebats. Just out of options at the end, unfortunately for him. And yeah, looking like Jaysha is... I mean, Firebat with a pretty good play here does get the Colette Oracle and the Brand. Not something you want to see as Jaysha. Obviously, if you play something like Brand and Injured Blade Master, you're just killing off your own minion. But let's see what Jaysha goes with here. He could just kill off this Azure Drake, but that would mean that he's only keeping his Zombie Chow on the field. And that's not something that Firebat really fears right now.
And look, a 5-mana Yeti here on top of that. In the
Oh, the
Nexus
Nexus
Championship
Champions,
route, which
right.
obviously isn't going to be used for the spell draw, I guess, here, as that wouldn't make much sense. But I mean, Firebat is just out of cards here, and I don't know what he can do. I mean, playing a heal bot for the 3/3.
Yeah, I mean, he was getting pretty low on health, and he did get the full health off of it, so you might as well get that on the field and use it for the combat value. It looks like Jiesha's gonna go for the Justicar right now, just to set up for future turns. He can use that to heal himself in certain situations, but he can also use it to get very aggressive with that Akanai Soul Priest in the future, so interesting to see him go for that. And Firebat's actually going to tank the 6 damage here, just to get rid of that Justicar.
You know, think about the, but he should be healing for 4 or dealing 4 damage with his Akanai, and yeah, I don't know what Firebat can do here. Even if there's a Cabal, he could possibly steal the Deathlord. I mean, Jiesha has to be running at least 2. But yeah, this is just rough.
Yeah, Jiesha, an interesting spot here. I mean, obviously, he doesn't really need to fear this Deathlord too much, so I imagine, yeah, he's just probably going to take out this heal bunt pretty, I mean, nice and easy there with that Akanai Soul Priest, and this is the pressure that he needs. He needs to have this Akanai stick to the board so that he can start smacking his opponent for forward turn with his heal. That's what the hero power is called, is heal. The original hero power is lesser heal, so Jiesha going to be trying to heal his opponent to death with that Akanai Soul Priest on the field. And Firebat in a bit of trouble, honestly. He doesn't have the card draw quite yet.
Yeah, D2 dropping an Allus Bomb here. With that, I actually did not know that, I have to admit. I just saw it as the bigger heal. I have played actually this card here in Priest, but I hadn't been looking at the name of it. Now we do see him heal the Deathlord for 4 now and dropping 2 of his own. I mean, the minions that Firebat has, he really doesn't want. I mean, the Deathlord effect is probably worse for Firebat. There is the option, I guess, that he could potentially vanish them back into his hand, so that actually may come into effect.
Right. I mean, I imagine the vanish would be not too bad here, honestly. Because those Deathlords, you don't want to be drawing things like the Cold Oracle. I guess he could gang it up if he ever is able to kill off his opponent's Deathlord and gets the Cold Oracle on the field. But, I mean, say something, get something like Bran, that's pretty much a disaster. So, it's just a really difficult situation for Firebat here. And just taking so much damage from this Akanai Soul Priest. As we see the Sylvanas hit the field, which is pretty good for Jiesha. Can't really ask for too much more than that. And now we see the Nexus Champion Sarad hit the field. What is he going to draw here? Wants some sort of damage spell, I believe. That's going to be a Blessing of Kings. Pretty good card, honestly. And I imagine just going to take out this Blood Mage Thalanos, because you don't want to give your opponent that spell damage. Even as a mill rogue, it could be pretty dangerous.
I think you have to, but I like cycling the Poet's Shield though, and if you're gonna do that, you do that first, obviously, so
Ooh.
I wouldn't mind that, but now, yeah, this is just kind
Jiesha
of...
getting aggressive. No fear any longer.
Ugh.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, this is just asking for something to happen here. I mean, for Blade Floyd to clear you, but I mean, is Vanish gonna come down? I would have to imagine Vanish coming down,
I
but
think,
then he probably
yeah,
wants to trade
Firebat's
the
gonna
Thalamus
draw.
first.
Yeah, he's gonna get the minion onto the field first, and then use the vanish, so he can get that into his hand. It's kind of like drawing a card here, which is pretty good for him.
I guess he wants the potential Cold Light as well on top of it. He gets the
Wow.
Cold Light. Oh, wow.
Gets the cold light. So now he can vanish, put that back into his hand.
But he can actually perhaps Shadow Step it though first. Yeah, no, just Shadow Step
Shadow
it.
Step looks like he. Oh yeah, he can Shadow Step it first and then get that into his hand. Costs 1 mana. We do know how to math, guys. So it costs 1 mana now, and he can now vanish after drawing his opponent a couple of cards. Something like a prep would be nice too, but I believe he's used one of his preps already. That's going to be the end of his turn, and after Jiesha was looking to be in a great position, now Firebat's right back into it.
I feel like it still is considerably ahead, and this is definitely still Jiesha's game to lose. I mean, he can just play a part of it, and if it just starts to attack for 4, Firebat will need to get a second heal bar here. But yeah, I guess, you know, our math is on, but our reading of Chinese is just not. But what about even, yeah, okay. I think Power Shield is something you should play, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like he's just afraid of getting into that mill range. I mean, just getting his minions a bit bigger would be kind of nice here. Firebat does pick up that heal bot crucially, so not going to be in too much danger of dying to that heal anytime soon if he does go for that play. Also has the gang up. Now he has to decide whether or not he wants to gang up his heal bot or gang up his Coldlight Oracle. Kind of a strange question to be asking against a priest, but this is where we are right now.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, is Firebat looking at going down 0-3, and this would be our third 3-0 here. I mean, looking into this match, I was expecting it to go to game
Wow.
five, maybe a 3-1 from Firebat, but yeah, this Milrogue is just falling short. I feel like though if Firebat is able to pull through a win with the
Wow.
Milrogue,
So
he
actually, he
could
can.
actually take the other two games. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. So this is really close, but he can vanish these guys to death here if he goes for that play, and will be the end of this Akanai Soul Priest. But would Jiesha still have enough damage with the Akanai in hand? Okay, looks like he's going to go for the sap instead to kill it off, and the refreshment vendor is a bit worried about his life total. But is that just game? Did Jiesha just win it? Because he has the Akanai and
he
he has
does. Yeah.
Blessing of Kings plus Akanai and heal. That's 10 damage. Will Jiesha see this? Looks like he's gonna go for the heal, gonna go for the Blessing of Kings, and that's gonna be Jiesha taking a 3-0 victory over Firebat. What an upset!
Jiesha looks, mildly content. He just beat the world champion, and yeah, it's really funny to see the reaction. The modesty is the expression is that basically he won by luck or something like that. That's how I'm at least interpreting Jace's. But I feel like he has to be celebrating as soon as he gets off stage, though.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of crazy to see Jay Shaw just kind of, shrug it off like, I just beat the champion, no biggie. Just putting another $1,250 into my pocket there by getting to the semifinals. And he is going to be facing off, I believe, Tom in the next round. And we aren't done with our round of 8 quite yet. We're going to be seeing Eloise versus Life Coach. But this has been a crazy day thus far. All 3 zeros, not what we would have expected coming into this. We saw only one 3-0 the entirety of the group stages, and that was 24 series.